Hey guys, I'm back with another Danmachi deck because I only play Danmachi. Alright, so let's just get right into the deck profile. This is the normal door pants deck. So let's start things off with the Brainstormer. We run 2 of the Hestia Brainstormer. That's the only Brainstormer that is usable in this deck. We only run 2 of them because since Danmachi has an outrageous amount of selection, you don't need any more than the 2. Moving on, we are starting with the Ana Drop Search Bombs. These are very important for the deck just to make sure you can get your combo off once you hit level 1. And you don't really run any high power level 0s throughout the entire deck, so you really do need to have access to these bombs. Next is the working Hestia. She can choose one of your opponent's characters, and they are not allowed to move until the end of your opponent's next turn. And she can also look it up to the top 3 cards from your deck, choose an event, add it to hand, and then you pitch a card. This is useful for 2 things. The first thing is preventing your opponent from using the level 0s that they have in their backstage from attacking next turns if you swing over their board that turn, or locking their standby targets into the backstage. Utilizing her, you can just force their level 2 standbys out of the entire game. Next, we'll look at the Tiona. This is your Climax Swapper, but in this deck we're running 2 of them because one of our level 3s has an experience condition. Having 2 of them will make having her experience condition a lot more consistent. And lastly, our level 0 bells. They're here for 2 reasons. One, to have the red fix, since in the 0 lineup there is not much red at all. So you'll be leveling these guys more than using their abilities. But the ability that we're looking at for this deck is the pay 1, clock 1, and then you can bounce himself and 1 other card to your hand. You can use this to loop either the Hestia or the Drop Search. It's pretty funny to drop the Drop Search and bounce it back to your hand to do it again next turn. I like doing that when I just can't get enough of these in my hand early on, and I really need the bells for my next turn. Moving on to level 1, we'll look at the level 1 Climax combo of the boys. Our level 1 Bell and his door Climax. What he does is, when you play your Climax, you can search your waiting room or your deck for the knife event, the Hestia knife. That's this one. And when he attacks, he can get power based off of the amount of firebolts in your waiting room. He gets 1,500 for each firebolt, which means just having 4 of these in your waiting room, he's sitting at a comfortable 10-5 at level 1, which is over a lot of level 3s. We'll look at the knife that he grabs next. This is basically a torch event, where you can play it on your turn as an event as long as you have a Bell or Hestia on your field. It will allow you to look it up to the top 4 cards from your deck, choose a character, add it to hand. And you can also play it as a backup if you have a Bell on your field. It doesn't have to be up front. As long as you have a Bell on your field, you can play it as a backup. But if you don't have the Bell, you can't do it. This also doesn't have any color requirement. So going into level 1, if you just have the red in your level, you can still play this as a backup. And lastly, we'll look at the Firebolts for this level 1 combo. The Firebolt is pretty simple. You just play it, and then it allows you to grab a card from your waiting room. The level of the card is dependent on the amount of bells in your waiting room. So if you have 3 bells in your waiting room, you can add a level 3 to your hand. Looking at some of the other level 1s, we are running 2 of the Welfs. So what these Welfs do is that their first effect, you can pay 1 and tap himself, and you can look at up to X cards from the top of your deck based off of the amount of Pyonkichis in your waiting room. +1. And you can grab any level 1 or higher card and add it to your hand, including events. And this is event heavy, so that is helpful. Also, while he's on field, your Pyonkichis get -1 cost, so they become free. We only run 3 Pyonkichis and 2 Welfs. We run 2 Welfs because having one of them makes it a lot harder to see if you need it. Like if one gets stuck in stock, that's pretty much it, because if you're having a hard time and this is stuck in stock, you're not going to be able to pay him out. So having the second one is just insurance for you. And we're running only 3 Pyonkichis because it's not as important as you'd think it is. It's nice to have, and you should grip onto it depending on your matchup, but it's not a game changer. It won't make or break the game for most of the time. And the last level 1 that we have is Chigusa. Her first effect is useless for us because we don't run the other card that she bonds to. Well, not bonds to, she gives it power, but it doesn't matter. What we're looking at is the second effect, where we tap her, and we give something 1,000 power and on reverse bottom deck. This will help with Danmachi's bigger weaknesses of getting rid of standby targets. This gives you the hard removal that you need. Depending on your matchup, you're going to want to get this as soon as you can. Moving on to the level 3s, we'll start with a 1 of the Bell early play. This condition is having 4 or more other characters on your field, and you'll pay 2, and you'll heal 1. When he attacks, he'll get to marker a Hestia knife and the other knife, but we don't play it in this deck, so it's just going to be the Hestia knife. That will give him an extra 1,500 power, and that will put him to 9,000 power, which isn't much for a level 3 early play, but having a healer is better than not having a healer. The next level 3 we're going to look at is going to be your main early play of the Eyes early play. This card is very good for this deck because she can just get to 15k cross turn hexproof with no backups, and most opponents can't do anything about this. This will give you an open lane 90% of the time, I'd say. The only condition is having herself in the level, which will give us only 2 copies to work with, but that's why we run 3. You're not going to play 3 of them ever, so just having the 2 of them is good enough. And you're leveling her most of the time anyway, because you only run 1 other yellow card, which is the Climax Swapper. And she will make her condition a lot easier to manage, because you just play her and then swap her into your level. And lastly, we'll look at the finisher of Hestia. She is a pay 2, discard a card from your hand, and heal 1 card to your stock. So to tri-field her, you only need 4 stock, and you'll be left with 1 extra stock to play around with. Her Climax combo makes it so that you can choose one of your characters to gain the effect, which is they gain 1 soul, and when your opponent cancels your damage, they have to take an additional 2 damage. And this can stack. So if you decide to put 2 or maybe all 3 of the abilities onto 1 Hestia, if they cancel it, they will burn the 2 damage 3 times. This is a pretty flexible finisher. It's not the best, but it can help in certain situations. Like if your opponent you know is compressed, you can give their abilities to themselves, and with the burn 2, you'll get the other cancels out of the way. So maybe you can stick a larger number at the end. She's not the best again, but she's the best for what we can do here. And that is the normal Danmachi deck, or at least my take on it.